Support for CFO Thought Leader comes from Ledge and US Bank.
Hi, it's Tucker Marshall, Chief Financial Officer of the J.M. Smucker Company. You're listening to the CFO Thought Leader podcast.
This is episode 1056.
I really look at the business in kind of three key areas, and I kind of really drive the company accordingly, which is, I call them my three Ps, which is precision, predictability, and performance. And when I say precision, it means we continue to close more accurately, faster, while also being able to deliver a clean audit. Predictability, reducing the margin between what we deliver and what we expect, right? So that means continuing to work with go-to-market teams on pipeline, capacity planning, and making, measurable impacts to the business and that are repeatable. And then performance, continuing to execute over an extended period of time at a high level. And so I really focus on creating durable and sustainable growth in the company. And I also think it's the role of the finance leader to help the business understand what financial shape the business must be in to optimize shareholder value.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's episode, we speak with Zach Johnson, CFO of Cribl. Ask any business manager what are the three Ps in business, and they'll likely say people, process, and product. However, ask any finance team member at Cribl that question, and you'll likely hear a different answer. Precision, predictability, and performance. These are the three Ps that guide CFO Zach Johnson's data-driven approach to finance leadership. You'll hear about those three Ps and much more on today's episode. We'll begin after this. You know the feeling. A report deadline is looming, and your team is buried in spreadsheets with tasks like bank and payment processor reconciliations, journal entry prep, and cash flow reporting. But what if there was a better way? Ledge automates the tedious work that slows your team down, like high-volume transaction matching, journal entry creation, and even cash flow forecasting. Ledge glues all of your financial data together across your ERP, banks, payment processors, data warehouse, and more, and automates any workflow, no matter how complex or unique to your business. Get real-time cash flow visibility and make cash reporting and forecasting effortless while increasing controls and accuracy. And Ledge requires no IT or R&D resources. Ledge plugs right into your existing stack, so you can get set up in just a few hours. Imagine a world where your team can close the books faster with fewer resources. Imagine audit-ready data all year round. With Ledge, you can finally stop scaling headcount just to keep up with growth. Visit ledge.co, that's ledge.co, to learn more about how you can automate your finance operations without the heavy lift. Hello, we're speaking with Zach Johnson, CFO of Cribl. Zach, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So we're going to begin where we always do, Zach, and that's to ask you to look back for us and share with us some of those experiences you feel prepared you to become a finance leader. What would those experiences be for you?
Yeah, happy to share. So it was, when I started my career, I actually thought I would be an investment banker at the time. In fact, funny story here, a bit of a shout out to mom. So I started my career, I was trying to get into investment banking. It was kind of a rough time to get into investment banking as we had just came out of the banking crisis. And so I was actually contracting at a software company, helping them with the NetSuite implementation. And so I was working there. I got a job actually to go work at Morgan Stanley because I was interviewing there. And here I am at a tech company as a guy. I came to work every day in a suit with a tie And people asked, was I interviewing every day? Was I going to a funeral? Was I going to a wedding? I was just starting to learn kind of about the tech environment and the tech culture. And I remember going to my manager at the time and saying like, okay, hey, I'm going to go do this investment banking thing. I'll see you later. And my manager being like, wait, hold on a second. Let me see about this. And so they actually countered my offer at the investment bank. And so then I came home, and I was at the time, I had gone to school down in Atlanta and moved back home to help out my mom. And so I was staying at her apartment at the time. So I came home to mom and I said, okay, I got these 2 job offers. Good news is I'll be moving out of here soon. So that'll be good for you. But what do you think, Mom? What should I do? Should I go to Morgan Stanley or should I go to this tech company? And my mom said, hey, Morgan Stanley has been around for 100 years. It'll always be there. You should go. At the time, she called it Splunk, which it ultimately ended up becoming Splunk at that time. And so that's actually how I kind of embarked on kind of my corporate finance career, which is I kind of started in the accounting side. So while I'm not a CPA, I learned enough accounting to be dangerous. I did anything from, equity reporting and audits and things like that. And then I eventually kind of transitioned over to the FP&A side. So that's, the financial planning and analysis side. And then that's where I think I really kind of found, my passion for finance. And really it was because the interactions with the business. But I've also had the privilege, and I'll say this, like, I've been very fortunate. I had the privilege to work with a number of great companies and amazing CFOs and leaders. So at Splunk, I got to work with Dave Conti, still have a relationship with him to today. And then even before coming here to Cribl, I was at a company called RingCentral, and I got to work with Mitesh Dhruv. And so that I've just had the opportunity to work with like amazing leaders and mentors. I've also seen like a lot of different types of companies, which I think really prepare me to be a CFO and be successful, which is I've seen hypergrowth, here at Cribl, at Splunk. I also was leading finance at a startup called Lightbin, where I saw open source. I saw hyperscaling at RingCentral, where we had to deal with the COVID outcome and how do we scale the infrastructure to support all the things that were happening during COVID. Now all of a sudden people were working remotely, and how do we do that from a gross margin, financial outcomes? And that's really where I got like a really strong understanding of unit economics, which I've really brought here to Cribl, and really have pushed that to kind of make that into the DNA here at Cribl. And I think if I just kind of summarize all of it, I just really enjoy learning. And I believe the finance role at a company is always about learning. And the thing I think it's great about finance is there's high stakes that come with that learning. So you're learning things, but there are real stakes if you don't get these things figured out quickly for the business. And I kind of enjoy the pressure of that learning environment. And I think learning leads to discovery, creating new processes, better assumptions, new business models, and then just new ways to partner with the business. And, the kind of list goes on. And so that's really what, has kind of prepared me to be, a CFO leader.
Yeah. Nice overview for us. Thank you for that. I want to just point out your tenure at Splunk was 8 years. So you make quite an investment of years there. And it was those important years where really you're just sort of the entry level in 2009 finance manager, and you climb the ranks to become a director of FP&A over time. So, and you grew up with that company. Can you give us a sense of, the company that you joined versus the one that you move on from eventually?
Yeah. So I joined the company probably roughly about, I want to say like 40 million in revenue. And then when I leave, about 1.5 billion in revenue. There was about 130 employees when I started, and then probably, almost 2,000 when I left. And it was an amazing experience. I also was there, 3 years before we went public, and then stayed on 5 years once we were public. So I got to see the full buildup, the transition, and, like I said, amazing leaders and mentors. They gave me the opportunities. I said, hey, I raised my hand and said, I want to learn about these things. Will you give me the opportunity? And they're like, sure. So I'm sitting in earning calls, call downs with analysts and hearing the questions. And so I just got this amazing exposure. And so it really became kind of, I didn't get an MBA. That experience really became kind of my MBA experience in terms of really getting that firsthand experience, seeing everything from 0 to 100. And that's also what led me to meet some of the people that I still work with today in my network, which are actually the co-founders here at Cribl as well.
Never had an itch to go back and try investment banking. You seem to have known that corporate finance would provide the opportunities going forward. I don't think you ever looked back.
I didn't. I ran to a number of investment bankers over the time through my experience, and many of them said, "Yeah, you want to stay over here. Don't come over to our side." And so, shout out to them for being good mentors as well. So,
yeah, interesting. So I just wanted to share rather traditional, some of that just titles. Again, you were a finance analyst, senior finance analyst, finance manager, director of FP&A, VP of finance. And then when you joined Cribl, and I think this is significant as well, you've been there a little over 4 years now, but you join as a VP of finance, and then there's another step before you enter the CFO role over that span of time. I guess you entered last year, about a year ago. That seems like if you had to design it, that's the way to enter the CFO office, because you're not being parachuted into an opportunity or a company you don't know anything about, really. You know where all the light switches are. How's that?
Yeah, I prefer light switches versus the things in the closet. I think when people look at, the resume or whatever, there's a very kind of straight line kind of experience. But hey, I'll say this, I've never been a title chaser or chasing for opportunity. It's always been about learning. And so when I can go to a place and learn and add value, that's always what's kind of driven me there. And it's been great to be at a company where I've kind of started from the beginning and built it up. And I was the first finance hire here at Cribl. Kind of a funny story there as well, which is my daughter was born in August 2020. It's COVID time, and I get a call from the CEO of Cribl, and he's basically saying, "Hey, I've been kind of helping them on the side with their business model and just helping them answer questions and just being, as a part of the network. And I'm always a big believer in give your advice, pay it forward. And so I'm sitting on the couch. It turns out kids kind of sleep a lot in the beginning. And so he texted me like, "Hey, do you want to talk? And do you have a minute?" And I said, "Sure." So I get out my laptop. I'm ready to, dive into a model and talk to him through the, ratios on headcount and all that stuff. He's like, "Oh, no, you won't need the spreadsheets today, Zach." And I said, "Okay, well, what can I help you with?" He's like, "Well, I just raised $35 million with Sequoia. Is that big enough for you, motherfucker? You're going to come and join." and so from there, I was like, "Okay, let me dig into this." And so, I got to meet, the board, which is Max Gazer from CRV and Pat Grady over at Sequoia. And then I met the executive team at the time, which was our, Abby Strong, our CMO, as well as Ferry Buey, who's our VP of operations. And so once I kind of was got comfortable with it, I did check in with the wife, because as you may have noticed, this would have been the third startup I joined. And so my wife, I had to check in with the wife a little bit there to make sure she was good. And she kind of was like, "I knew you were going to do it again anyways. You just love going and solving problems. And so I knew you were going to end up at a startup again soon." And so I jumped in and I was finance hire number one. And so when I got there, they had kind of like an outsource, contractor doing it. And I kind of stepped in, and the first thing I did was actually bring in someone that I've worked very closely with. Her name's Tressa Wells, and she's now the controller here at Cribl. We actually worked at Splunk together a number of years back, but, kept ties and a relationship, and brought her in. And I said, "Hey, for the next, and there's 40 people at the company. We're roughly about 6 million, or we're at 3.5 million ARR when I joined." And so it was like, "Hey, for the next 6 months, we're just going to run the business, me and you, and then we're going to figure out what we need," because I just don't believe in you run a playbook model, because I needed to figure out what Cribl needed from finance, not what finance was going to give to Cribl. And so that was kind of how, I spent my time. And then after that, we're like, "Okay, this is what Cribl needs." And then that's when we started making the investments, building out the org structure for finance, and really kind of moving hand in hand with what Cribl needed to grow and scale. And so to your question around how did these things prepare me to be a CFO, getting that firsthand experience, building it, having kind of, got my scar tissue from my past experience in terms of what's kind of been successful, what's kind of not been, really kind of helped me get there. And then kudos to our board and to, the executives at the table. They've always believed that I was the person for the role. And so anytime they had feedback for me, I'm always, humble, willing to listen. And I just think keeping that learning mindset it's been very beneficial to me.
Well, that's a terrific overview for us. Thank you for that, Zach. We might have a few more career-related questions for you a little later in the podcast, but right now, let's find out about Cribl. What type of company is this? What are its offerings, really?
Yeah, outside of being a funny name and a fun word to say, it actually just where did the name come from? It's actually like a sifter that like gold miners used to use, and so if you kind of think of data as the new oil or the new gold, Cribl is the sifter, the filterer that makes sure that you're getting the most value and that gold is kind of surfacing to the top. But to be more specific, Cribl was founded in 2017 by our three co-founders. And what they did was they basically said, hey, and I think this is one of the things that's, unique about Clint Sharp, our CEO, is he was a practitioner. So the people we sell to are who he used to be. And so he has a firsthand experience with their pain and their challenges. In fact, when I talk to customers, they often say, like, whoever built your product has sat in my chair and knows what I felt. And that's just, it just speaks to how they built the company, which was they didn't look at the market and say, like, hey, that's $100 billion TAM. I just want to I'll get 1% of that and I have an amazing company. They said, we're going to identify the challenges we see in the market that we've experienced, that we've dealt with, and then we're going to go solve problems. And then customers will get delighted, and then we'll either create our own market or we'll find ourselves in a market through that. And that challenge that they identified was, how do you optimize the value for machine data for IT and security professionals? And the challenges that they identified were, hey, that data is growing exponentially. So at a 28% CAGR, those budgets are not. I understand that, us as CFOs are probably driving that, but at the same time, everybody's got to run a business. And that many of these organizations have tons of tools, right? As a CFO, I get to see all the POs and everything, and there's lots of software in these companies. And so you have all these tools to manage. These organizations are also generally kind of understaffed. And so they really said, like, how can we get more leverage to these folks that are understaffed? How can we help them manage all these tools in a more efficient way? And I keep mentioning machine data, and we talk about unstructured data, but let me talk about what that is for a second. So machine data and this unstructured data, it comes from applications, it comes from servers, it comes from things like cloud providers, it's infrastructure. And what I mean by unstructured is it doesn't come in these nice, neat rows and columns, right? It's not the spreadsheets I'm building models in or running P&Ls off of. It's coming in all these different forms, metrics, traces, logs, and we really shape that data and make sure that people get value. Now, another thing to call out, I would say, is like the data volumes are really high. And to really illustrate that, the other companies that we're kind of like are like a Databricks or a Snowflake, but we're not servicing kind of business data. We're more on this security, IT, structured data. But as a comparison, like a decent Snowflake customer is about 100 terabytes of data a year. Okay, so you're storing that data, you're managing it. The customers we serve, they're moving on, many of them are 100 terabytes of data a day. So the level of volume that we're talking about is huge and enormous. And so trying to get your arms around that, as you can imagine, could present a lot of challenges. And so we really come in and offer solutions that help solve that for our customers. And we do it in a number of ways. And there's kind of 4 pillars that we have that do that. We route it, and that's with our stream products. We collect data. You can use our Edge product for that. We analyze it. Our search product is good for that. And then we store it. And then we actually released that product this year, which is our Lake product. And so between those 4 products, and you don't have to use them all, but many customers do. But using those components for what you need helps you kind of manage this unstructured data, helps you get value, and really makes it so that these professionals can turn from kind of being the folks that are trying to build all the plumbing and piping and trying to make things work into business value folks for their organizations and really drive outcomes for their businesses. And, we just love to delight customers and make sure that they're successful.
We always like to understand better something of the capital structure. I see a Series E So you're fairly along down the funding path, but can you maybe give us a abbreviated history of funding to date, or where you are?
Sure. Yeah. So you are correct. We recently raised the Series E. That was in August of this year. That kind of brings our total funding number, to something a little over $600 million. The company has been well capitalized. I will say infrastructure software, while sticky and great retention rates, and as you're doing the right things, you can also get good growth rates. Has a bit of like an upfront cost as you're kind of building, the workings of that technology, and so does require capital to drive that. And so fairly well capitalized there. We've also been able to bring along great partners along the way as well on the investment community side that have really helped advise us and make sure that we're kind of doing the right pattern recognition to help us kind of scale and grow in the right direction.
It's interesting. We want to, of course, talk to you about your lines of sight into this business, and we believe it's most likely the familiar metrics, but we'll allow you to share them with us. And then I want to ask you to think back to your days at Splunk and the metrics that mattered to you then. You have a point of comparison that would be interesting, a fast-growing company from more than a decade ago. And anyway, tell us about your top-of-mind metrics today. What would those be?
I really look at the business in kind of three key areas, and I kind of really drive the company accordingly, which is, I call them my 3 Ps, which is precision, predictability, and performance. And when I say precision, it means we continue to close more accurately, faster, while also being able to deliver a clean audit. Predictability, reducing the margin between what we deliver and what we expect, right? So that means continuing to work with go-to-market teams on pipeline, capacity planning, and making, measurable impacts to the business and that are repeatable. And then performance, continuing to execute over an extended period of time at a high level. And so I really focus on creating durable and sustainable growth in the company. And I also think it's the role of the finance leader to help the business understand what financial shape the business must be in to optimize shareholder value. So when I look at public companies in the software space and the ones that have the characteristics that generally align with higher valuations, we are looking at metrics, things like Rule of 40, Rule of 50, and that helps us and helps me kind of shape the conversation with us internally and make sure that we're driving towards the right direction. And, as a company that's high growth and we continue to grow at a high pace, every year we make improvements to the business to make sure that we're creating the right levers, measuring those levers, and creating to drive to those outcomes we want and getting more efficient every year.
Tell us something about a metric that you have sought to educate the greater organization about. And maybe it was one that you just hadn't applied as much effort to, again, educate the organization about. It was always there, but it's one that maybe you've exposed more broadly. Or maybe there's a certain group within the company you felt you needed to educate differently about a certain metric and why it should matter to them more than it does.
Yeah. So actually, it's kind of a funny story there. So I've always kind of talked about this kind of unit economics concept, and then also bringing together the metrics, but also helping the business understand that their role and how they participate in it. And so just to go a little deeper there, we have what's called our manager summit here, and shout out to Lisa Nielsen, our people leader here at Cribl. She puts together this event where she brings all the managers at the company, and it's an opportunity to educate them, help them in terms of developing skills to be great managers, which will ultimately benefit the employees culturally, but also from a productivity standpoint as well. And I was given the opportunity, there was a little apprehension, but to talk about metrics to this group. As they are leaders in the company, I felt it was important that they understand, how do the metrics work and why are they important? And in that discussion, we went through, CAC LTV, Rule of 40, what is free cash flow margin, and how do all those things play together? And, I kept using this kind of like, this is what investors care about. This is what investors care about. And at the end of as I'm kind of, halfway through this conversation, I'm like, I keep saying investors, and you're probably like, it's this third entity that's off to the side. That's this foreign thing. But then I asked everybody, hey, raise your hand if you have equity in this company. And of course, everybody in the room raised their hand. And I said, guess what? You care about metrics too, because you're an investor as well. And so really articulating for them how the levers work. So for example, not to pick on our go-to-market folks, but, reps are always like, hey, let me get an SE, or let me get another channel person, or let me get this. And helping them understand like, cool, I can invest in this SE for you. But that might mean your quota goes up. So how do you want to, let's work together to find the right balance and lever where we're getting the right outcome for the business, but we're in this together. Like, I'm building something from the tops down that's going to be the right shape financially for the business, but I need you from the bottoms up in correlation with my team to figure out what are the right levers that are going to drive us to that outcome in the most efficient way and in the most repeatable way. And so helping everybody understand that, I think the one that I will say from the audience participation, the rule of 40 was the one that I think people are not as familiar with as I had assumed, but we've been educating folks. I've actually kind of gone on the road with this presentation. We have a development center in Poland, actually went to Poland and presented on this too. And the level of interest, once people kind of start understanding how it kind of works and the nuances of, well, the rule of 40 is revenue growth plus cash margin, and that's the one we use. And so understanding the balance there, but also how it reflects in the market, where, growth is still a bigger driver in that equation. And so we can't lose focus on the overall growth strategy as well. So
curious about your finance function, just given the size the company is, how you prioritize at this place in time. For a company this size, do you organize differently your finance function? Is there something you can outsource? Is there something, along the way you brought back in?
Yeah. So I've had, and in typical startup fashion, I've worn different hats and supported different functions. At times I ran the people team and other things, legal as well. And so I've run many of the teams here at Cribl before. But I think the way where the finance team is today, it's really kind of structuring us for the future and really building those kind of foundational building blocks. I have brought in 2 key leaders most recently into my team on the finance side that are going to really help drive with me and the team going forward around this. And that's Tim Emanuelson, my chief accounting officer, and Ben Patch, my SVP of finance. And between the two of them, we're kind of hitting all the different things between, accounting, procurement, travel, tax, FP&A, corp dev, IR, and really kind of between the, them and the rest of the team, we're working together to build that. I also do believe in not having too many lines. I like people to have access to me, and I like to have access to the team as well. And so having the communication go up and down is really important to me, and having that transparency, because I believe that every day that someone's making a decision, if they know a little bit better about why they're making that decision, we're all going to go the right direction, right? And so I'd always talk about if you've ever sat in a canoe, if we're all rowing in the same direction, we'll get from one place to the other. If everybody's kind of doing their own thing, guess what? You're just going to spin in the water. And that's what I'm trying to avoid. I don't want to be spinning in the water with the team.
We want to touch on AI with you. Is this a company that leverages AI for its competitive advantage? Is it really happening? Is it proof positive? What would you tell us?
Sure. So I'll kind of break the question into 2 pieces. So us internally, from how we use technology perspective, we're following the market closely. We're trying to make sure that we're, not falling behind or anything. We did release an AI Copilot product this summer. And it's definitely exceeded expectations from adoption. Now, our Copilot's not like a magic box. It's not like you send things into it and it gives you magic answers on the other side. It's really to enhance the user experience. And so it does things like it gives you you can ask it like, hey, how do I set up a data pipeline for syslog? And it'll give you discrete steps on how to do that. We do have to be careful about how much AI we insert into our product, given we're working with sensitive data. Many of our customers are using us for security and mission critical systems. We also sell to the federal government. So we have to be very intentional about how we use AI internally. And so, for example, like if the AI hallucinated, it could have severe consequences for the people in our customer base. But the other side of AI I'll talk about is, let's say that AI is kind of, the skyscraper that's being created in the future here. Cribl's we're the copper wiring, the plumbing inside the building, the cat wires for the network. we're the things that are going to make the building effective. And what I really mean by that is AI is generating all this data, and we're going to see a lot more data. I was talking about that 28% CAGR. That's probably going to go up with AI, and we're going to be instrumental in terms of kind of, making sense of that data and making sure that, kind of reducing the noise there that it's going to create and make sure that people are focusing on the most valuable thing there.
We're up to our finance strategic moment question, where we ask you to just share a moment of strategic insight that you've had along the way during your career. What comes to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
Yeah. I'll first say that, nothing you do in finance, you do alone. You're always doing it as a part of a team. But the experience that really jumps out to me was actually my experience at Splunk. And just to kind of take a macro level perspective here, we're in this kind of AI era, and you could argue that AI's been around for multiple decades and everything, but let's just say we're in the era right now where it's becoming more mainstream and the impact is getting broader. Well, if you look kind of a decade ago, and I wouldn't say we're fully through the transformation, cloud was the big transformation that was happening about a decade ago. And so the same thing happened at Splunk, and that was kind of my strategic moment in finance, where Splunk at the time sold on-prem software, all right, just like everybody kind of did in that era. And then they were in a process where the world was kind of shifting on them, moving more to cloud. And so we had to figure out how are we going to participate in that world, and how we're going to take our current technology and move it into the cloud. Now, this is where you end up working with a lot of different people across. There's not one single way to do it. It wasn't just like copy paste the code and now you're in the cloud, right? And so there was a lot of questions on how we're going to do it. How do you, pricing? How do we decompose the architecture as such that we can put it into the cloud? Cloud costs. Are we going to go use a public cloud vendor? Are we going to build our own data centers to support our cloud? What's the go-to-market strategy? Now we're no longer selling, to your CapEx budget. We're now selling to your OpEx budget. And so there was all this learning I did from this strategic moment, and it was great. We got to do these outcomes, build it, and I really think of it as my moment because we're sitting there and I'm like, we're comparing data center costs to if we go public cloud, and we're trying to figure out, okay, if we get this many reserved instances and we negotiate this with, a cloud provider, will that be more efficient than we build it ourselves? Do we have the people that can build and stack racks? And this is where, when you're building your own data centers, and I got a lot of experience of that at Ring Central as well, which is like, you're managing energy, you're managing kilowatts. And so there's a lot of complexity there. And it was just like taking all that complexity and simplifying it for the business was really that moment for me when saying like to our CFO, like, hey, here's what I think is the right decision for us to do moving forward. Here's why, here are the pros and cons, but this is going to give us the most flexibility on the financial outcome. Because at the time we weren't really sure, like, this cloud thing, while it had been a while, we weren't sure if it was this going to be a blip or something that was really, our customers are going to push us to. And so we didn't want to maybe go in too deep and find ourselves where we couldn't get it back out. And so we really wanted a model that, offered that flexibility to us.
Are you tired of manual, fragmented, and time-consuming expense management processes? Then the U.S. Bank Commercial Rewards Card might be right for your business. More than just a card, it's an all-in-one card, expense, and travel management solution that replaces outdated expense management methods with a single intuitive platform. Specifically designed to scale with your growing business, it provides the control and real-time insights into spend that you need. It integrates with your existing tools, lets you set custom spend policies, captures all expenses automatically, and liability is kept at the corporate level. Employees can even book travel right in the platform. You also get to choose your rewards, either points or rebates, all while saving money with no annual fee. So why wait? Manage your cash flow better and streamline your business operations today with the U.S. Bank Commercial Rewards Card. Visit usbank.com/CFO to learn more.
We're going to move to what we refer to as our mentoring round. And here's where we're going to ask you to look back again. And again, we touched on you were the first finance hire at Cribl. But as you advanced after a few years into the CFO role, as prepared as you were, as we've discussed on your career journey, there's still something, a piece of advice, if you could go back in time and give yourself. What was it as the responsibilities of the CFO office came on your shoulders? There must have been something you would like to go back in time and tell yourself.
Yeah. I wish it was going to be like this epiphany, groundbreaking advice, and people are probably listening going to say, hey, I've heard this before, but it's build a great team. And I'm going to double down on this a bit. Don't settle for okay. And so I really hold a high bar, and my team does too, in terms of how they hire. We don't always get it right, and we feel it when we don't. But if you spend the time to hire the right people and don't just hire fast or settle, it pays dividends. You get people that are bought into the culture, bought into the team, people that add value. And I know it seems obvious in the day, but I think I would just tell myself, like, I know everybody's telling you this advice, but it's real. This is really the thing you should focus on, because ultimately it's all about the people. And I think just to also call on this is that I think one of the things that's kind of surprised me about the CFO role also is that many CFOs are very generous with their time and giving advice. I think the CFO role itself, in some ways has maybe an isolation kind of feeling to it. And I've just been super surprised how generous CFOs have been with their time. From the people I mentioned that I've worked with directly to, the former CFO of Okta, former CFO of Twilio, former CFO of Coupa, former CFO of HashiCorp. The list could go on. Like, people have been super generous with their time with me, and I've been super. That's been the most surprising thing. That people are so generous with their advice and with their time.
Just curious if you have a point of comparison here. Many of your senior hires, it sounds like, are people you were known entities, people perhaps you had worked with before or what have you. But how long does it take to make a senior hire? And you said you take your time doing it, and it's important to do that from what we've heard many times on this. But can you give us some sense of, how long is the hiring process sometimes?
Yeah. So I had experience with, I'll just take my two most recent senior hires as an example. Had experience with Tim Emanuelson before, known quantity and known him. But Ben Patch, this is our first time working together. And I had that role open for about 9 months before I found the right person. And it just, until it felt right for the business and for me, I just wasn't going to make the call. And I started looking for hiring that role actually at the end of last year. And so, it took time, and it did mean more for me personally and all those things, but it was the right sacrifice, because now, Ben's been here, a couple months now, but he's been hitting the ground running, and he's really, knocking it out of the park. And we brought in someone that, he was at Cohesity, he was at PagerDuty. He brings the right level of experience, and he's the right fit for the culture and the team as well.
Well, we always like to have our guests reflect a little on the personal side. We know you had a new baby during COVID, but anything else you can share with us about from the personal side? Something that maybe your colleagues might not even know about you. I don't know. Anything?
Yeah. So not a lot of people, but a good number of people know this. But so, as you mentioned, outside of work and family time, I have a wife, I have 2 kids, I have a daughter and a son that my daughter's 4 now, and my son actually just turned 1 in November. And so I enjoy spending time with them. But the other thing is, I train at what's called Sancho. I think the simplest way to explain is it's kickboxing with throws and some grappling in it. And I've been training at it for a number of years. And what I love about it is it focuses me mentally. I have a mind that kind of just continues to think about things. And so I have to give it a recharge or give it a break at times. And when I'm training, I can't focus on anything else. Otherwise, I'll literally get thrown or kicked or punched in the face. And so in addition to the physical health benefits, it's really given me this kind of mental fortitude. But yeah, not many people know about it because it just doesn't come up. Combat sports and things aren't something that comes up, and it's not something you would probably expect from a CFO out there getting tossed around on the mat. So
I mean, is this something from earlier as well? I mean, did you participate in your 20s or earlier in these types of sports? Or
Yeah, so actually the funny thing is I got exposed to it kind of later in life. I wasn't one of these people that kind of, as a kid grew up doing kind of martial arts and things. It was something a friend of mine really was like, hey, I think you have the right mindset for this, and I think you would you enjoy it. I think you would see beyond, the kind of physicality piece of it. And once I started going to it, really became almost meditative for me, and I was kind of surprised by that, and then I just kind of stuck with it, and it's continued to pay dividends.
Wonder if you have a book selection for us. Doesn't have to be a business book. It might be just something that influenced your thinking. It might be something you escape with. Anything come to mind?
Yeah. It's going to be a business book, but only because I do enjoy kind of the history of business and kind of the business. So the Jeffrey Moore books I find that are really good. They're holistic. I like Zone to Win and Escape Velocity. And I just enjoy reading about business. I think the other thing I'll call out is I enjoy podcasts as well. And I've actually been listening to the history of Microsoft lately, and it's just been fascinating how they've kind of moved and had to deal with all these different challenges from, DOJ to the microcomputer to, Azure cloud computing. It's a fascinating history on how they've really pivoted and when Bill Gates was running it as CEO, and then Steve Ballmer and the whole history there has just been totally fascinating to me. And I really enjoy that stuff. I think it's an intellectual curiosity, but it's also something that you can kind of, I think I can also apply in my day-to-day at times too, where I can kind of be like, well, if I think about what I've learned from history, how can we, take those nuggets, those lessons and apply them to today?
Yep. Great example for us. Thank you. We are up to our final question, where we're going to ask you to look forward finally. And we always look for your priorities as a CFO for the coming year. What would those be?
Yeah. So it'd be the 3 Ps I mentioned earlier. Having the company continue to focus on those, growing efficiently. So continuing to, work on our plan and execute on those plans at a high level. And the sexiest thing that every CFO and everybody at the company loves is governance. So really focusing on how to kind of, as the company continues to mature, how do we set it up for success in the future and do all the right things, whether, tax, boards, committees, all that stuff. And so those are really kind of my top 3 priorities over the next 12 months.
Zach Johnson, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thanks, Jack. It's been great. I've really enjoyed the dialogue and the conversation. Have a great day.
Hello, everyone. Jack here. Hope you've been enjoying our recent episodes of CFO Thought Leader. Please know that I don't take for granted this opportunity to serve you. Your time is valuable, and of course, so is the time of our CFO guests. I'll admit to you on certain weeks, I will pinch myself and say, hey, I get to do this for a living. I speak to all these impressive leaders. Undoubtedly, there are more aggressive interviewers out there, some who leave no stone unturned. But our swim lane is for finance leaders only. And those finance leaders have a unique style of leadership, one that is rooted in the burden of trust. In light of this, finance leaders must take great care not to forfeit this trust as they step into the role of being a more expressive leader. And that is what CFO Thought Leader is really about. That's why I try to remind myself week in, week out, how fortunate I am. Still, I need your help. Tell us what we're doing right. Tell us what we're doing wrong. Email me your comments at jack@cfothoughtleader.com. And please visit cfothoughtleader.com. You'll find a listener survey right on the nav bar. As always, thank you for listening.